Welcome to the Future of Work Decanted podcast. Today we'll be talking about furloughing. My name is Carleen Jackson. I'm the CEO of Cloud9 Insight and Vantage Academy. And we work with many SMEs who are experiencing challenges at this time with COVID-19. The government has given us an amazing opportunity to furlough employees. And today we'll be talking with our guests about that and understanding a little bit more. With me today is Andrew Hookway from award-winning Microsoft partner XTech Cloud.
Yeah, my name's Andrew Hookway. I'm MD of a company called XTech Cloud. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, managed service provider. We specialize in migrating customers from what we classify as the legacy IT, so the on-premise and private cloud, into Microsoft's public cloud, and have had a lot of success and performed over 120 migrations to date.
Fantastic. And I know that you've been, we'll get into more of the detail, but I know you've also been furloughing some of your team. It'd be great to sort of understand a bit more about that as we get in. I've also invited a good friend of mine, Hannah, who is actually an HR specialist with a master's in HR as well, and she works in the tech sector. I've had the great pleasure of working with Hannah in the past, and so I know that she has a lot of expertise in this area. So maybe, Hannah, you could just tell us a little bit about the company that you work with at the moment and what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And thanks for a lovely introduction. I'm Hannah. I'm Chief People Officer for a company called Futurely, and we are a fintech company. And actually what we do at the moment is very, very relevant to all of small businesses at the moment, because we provide cash flow forecasting in a software tool. And everyone at the moment, in order to protect their businesses, needs to understand a three-way cash flow forecasting element to their businesses. And that's exactly what the government are asking businesses to provide in order to take advantage of any of the loans and the requirements and the help that's on hand. So we're really busy at the moment, thankfully.
That's great. Yeah, I think that definitely I work with companies across SMB, and some sectors have been really hard hit, and others have, you could say, they've been more resilient and maybe even more in demand, and that's interesting to see. And so, but what I wanted to do first of all, I guess, is to really help those sort of maybe who don't have much experience of this. Is what is furloughing? Maybe, Hannah, you could share with us your view of what is it and why might organisations be thinking of that at this time?
Okay, so furloughing is basically, it's a temporary layoff of staff. So it exists anyway, but the scheme is obviously, everyone's talking about it at the moment because this is one of the schemes that the government has helped to provide helpful for companies, and it's to prevent unemployment or redundancies happening. So what would be almost a knee-jerk reaction at this time, in times of downfall because of COVID-19, revenue is going to impact a lot of small businesses. So instead of going straight to a redundancy situation, they are offering a furlough arrangement to prevent redundancies, because once this crisis is over, we will need those workers. So it's a temporary layoff. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess maybe, Andrew, what are your thoughts on if an organisation makes that decision? What do you see as the benefits all round, really, to that can be enjoyed?
Well, we've started furloughing ourselves because what we do is we support about 120, 130 customers, and then when that equates to about 4,000 to 5,000 users who have now all gone to work from home. So initially, when this crisis started, we were extremely busy making sure they could all work effectively. Those that had already moved to the cloud found it relatively straightforward, but those that hadn't, had ignored our advice, we had to spend a bit longer with them to get them up and running. But what we found was happening over time was that our customers were furloughing. So where they were being hit by, their customers' demand reducing, they were furloughing. So what we were seeing was we were seeing a reduction in the number of calls that we were getting for help. And then what happened was then these companies started to then contact us and say, very similar to, the banks giving us a holiday, landlords giving us a holiday, etc., etc., etc. Because we're furloughing, there are less people for you to support, and our support model is based on number of users. So we charge by the number of users in an organization. So what we've had to start doing, because we appreciate that if we can give a really good or a high level of support during this period to our customers and can be flexible, then hopefully when we come out the other side, that would be appreciated, never forgotten, and that hopefully they'll continue to be customers for life. However, because they're asking for a reduction in their fees for a period of time, there's no way that we can support that from a revenue point of view. So what that has forced us to do is it's forced us to furlough as well as a ratio compared to what our customers are doing. As that's reducing, we're then reducing our staff. But the way we see it is it's a flexible facility whereby you can pull that lever. But I think the minimum is about, I think it's 3 weeks or something.
It is, yeah, 3 weeks.
But the way I'm looking at it is that this person will leave the organisation for 3 weeks, but then I may have to bring them back as my customers start to ramp up again. So for us, it's a very, very effective tool for us to be able to fluctuate the service that we're providing and flex it.
And I know one of the other aspects of this time that we find ourselves in is that the schools are closed, and there's no sort of date that we're aware of that they're opening again. So what I've heard of is that some organisations are giving where furloughing is appropriate for their business because they've been hit by the coronavirus, that they are giving some employees the option to take this time off, and that sort of allows them to perhaps undertake and look after their kids and provide that sort of childcare, and in some cases, if they're at school, help them with their studies. And so that can be potentially a positive, or maybe you have elderly or other people that you need to care for at this time. So being able to have 80% of your recent salary up to a certain level could be helpful for those people experiencing personal challenges at this time as well. And I guess for the government, that's also a positive in not having people just flooding onto the unemployment line.
That's exactly how we've approached it, actually, Carleen, because we have only furloughed 4 people, actually, so it's a small handful of our staff, but we approached it in that exact way. We asked volunteers. We said, perhaps there are people that are finding it difficult working from home for various reasons, or actually it doesn't suit them, or so we asked for volunteers. And we've done it exactly that way, and it's been really positive. Interestingly, there wasn't that many volunteers to start with because they didn't want to appear to the leadership team that they didn't want to help in this time. So whilst we positioned it, look, this is an opportunity for you to use it as almost like a paid holiday, really. They were worried that the impression that we would get is that they didn't want to help at that time, but obviously that was far from it. We've also taken the choice to top up their pay, so they are going to still get 100% of their pay as well, which that we just need to do our little bit to keep helping those people, because we will need them back after this is over.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure that loyalty will definitely be repaid, because I haven't heard of many organisations actually doing that. The other thing I think that's happening at this time is that organisations who are, you could say, forward thinking, are looking at their sort of resources and their IP and the market needs, and they're changing at the moment. So it might be appropriate for some organizations to, you could say, effectively reorganize and use the talent that they have in different ways. And so I think I would encourage organizations to reconsider the sort of the structure, the products that you're offering, and now is a great time from a creative perspective to sort of really think about that. And so it might be that maybe that you might have a diminished demand in one department. For example, I was at the supermarket recently, and she said, the lady serving me said, I normally work in the cafe, but now I'm redeployed and I'm working on the tills. Because they're busier there and there's no need in the cafe. They've shut the cafe down. And so that was quite it's forward thinking for organizations to be thinking, how can they reuse the people that they have?
Yeah.
And so have you, Andrew, have you reorganized at all, or are you sort of, I guess in the tech sector, you're probably very much in demand. Do you see business continuing the same way that it is?
Well, there's two sides to our business. There's the support business, so that's the recurring revenue piece. So, we need to be available from, early in the morning till late in the evening to take calls from customers to make sure that they can continue working. That bit has started to drop off. So I don't know what it is, but people working from home initially created a lot of calls, but now they appear to have settled in. So I don't know what it is. If you go into the office, you seem to create more issues than you do when you're at home working on your laptop. So the sort of calls we get now is VPNs dropping, that sort of thing, or my broadband's slow and we can't really do anything about that. But that's really dropped off. So I think an active business actually generates issues. So it's really has dropped off. But what we're looking at is, as we furlough, we're looking at retaining the people that are multi-skilled. So, for example, we've got an individual that can work in sales, they can work on the service desk, and they can work in projects because they've done all three roles in the past. So as we're reducing in size, as we're furloughing, we're trying to make sure that we've got people that can multitask. And it tends to be the more experienced people. So the more experienced people are being asked to do, something they weren't doing before. A bit like the example of, someone working in the cafe and now working on the till. But that's the sort of thing that you now have to take into consideration. But also in the back of our minds, it is a temporary solution. So we've got to be able to react and respond quite quickly in regards to should there be a take-up. Because the other side of our business is projects, which is all about migrations, implementations, that sort of thing. Companies have started to put that on hold. However, we feel once they've got settled, that they'll start to think about their business again, and things that perhaps they didn't have time for before, they'll now start to talk to us and say, yes, we want to do that project now. So we're going to be able to have to respond on that front. And the way I've looked at it is that, okay, to furlough, to actually claim is 3 weeks. However, if someone has only furloughed for a week and I need them back for either revenue generating work or on support, then we'll ignore the fact that it was just okay. It was a free holiday, but we'll bring them back early. So it's having your finger on the pulse all the time with regards to how your customers are responding to this, because I think the upturn can happen at any point.
Absolutely, to keep an open mind. So what would your advice, Hannah, be for an organisation who's thinking, do you know what, this actually sounds like it might be right for my business? What do they do? How do they take that forward? What steps should they take to implement this furloughing?
Well, at the moment, the scheme is only open until the end of May. So I would probably, my first piece of advice was to look at things quickly. You can backdate until the beginning of March, but it only applies to staff that have been employed from the 28th of February on your PAYE, so contractors and things like that. It doesn't apply to. I would suggest, you're looking at parts of your business that that has declined. So really, this scheme is to put in place. It's where work may have contracted a little bit because of COVID-19, or sales may have dried up a little bit, or support might have dried up a little bit. I would recommend going through, like you would any redundancy process, asking for volunteers first, and just so you can position it that this is to reassure people that this is only temporary, and outlay the positive element of being able to be furloughed. Because in some elements and areas as well, if somebody is furloughed, they are eligible to claim universal credit, so they can kind of top up their pay that way. So it's not all negative. You can also use furloughing for you're not allowed to work. They're very clear that you're not allowed to perform any work. You can do voluntary work. You can also perform training. So if you're looking at areas of the business where you need to pivot because of the market is changing, and you need to look at upskilling in certain areas, or making your workforce more diverse in their talent, then you can use that time as well for furloughing to give them some training, or to point them in some direction of resources to upskill. But in terms of the practicalities of how you actually do it, the advice is very scarce out there, and I'm in a number of HR networks where I think there's companies have been in danger of being a bit blasé about it. And actually, because there's very little legal advice out there from the government, and there's very little guidance. In fact, there's no guidance on how to do it. It's kind of test as you learn. So there will be an uptick in discrimination claims, I'm for sure. So it's really important that it's done correctly and transparently, and it should be done through consultation. Because this is a change in contract, and so any change in contract, you need to get the employee's agreement. So you need to talk to them about why. You need to ensure them why, and then you need to create a contract amendment for them, or a furlough agreement for them to sign, and that would outline the reasons for furloughing and what happens at the end of the furlough time element. So they're the kind of main steps that you need to be aware of.
And I'm assuming that they're still, during that time, they are effectively still bound by the terms of your employment contract. Yes. Because they are effectively an employee.
Yes, they are, and I think it's really really important to point that out, actually. So they will still be accruing holiday, those kind of things. They are still an employee. We've said to our employees, we have like an all hands via Zoom Mondays and Fridays. If they want to, and only if they want to, they're welcome to join that, because it's not working. It's only a 15-20 minute catch up to see what the rest of the company's done. But it's really important that they still feel part of your culture and your company. So we have put that together for them as well.
And so what would your sort of advice be to an employee? How should they be considering whether this was a good thing for them? What would your sort of tips be to them?
I think, it's very difficult. It obviously depends on the individual, because we are, this unprecedented word is bandied around a lot, but it is. We are in unprecedented times. And I've read many articles about people going through this at the moment. It's likened to the grief cycle, because we are on our own. If you have employees living on their own as well, it's a very lonely space. Normally, in normal circumstances, when you get a paid holiday like this, you'd be going to Barbados, or you'd be going out with your friends, and you can't do that. So what I would suggest is that employers look at it and try and help those employees on furlough with some practical advice. Not necessarily, it doesn't, it could be wider than the training advice. You could curate some resources for them to say, these are a list of courses that are free at the moment. These are the museums that are doing virtual tours. These are the theatres that are doing live streaming, and just regularly keep in contact with them, because it can be a positive for both the employee and the employer, but I think it's going to be the skill of the employer and how they keep in contact with that employee to regularly reassure them that this is just a temporary measure. I think that's going to be key to making it a positive.
And Hannah, you're not allowed to, is it right you're not allowed to email people?
No, you are allowed to email people.
You are.
Definitely, yeah. You're not that. So the key thing is you're not allowed to ask them to do any work. They're not allowed to perform. In particular, they're not allowed to provide any service or generate revenue for you. They are allowed to undertake training. I wouldn't recommend that training is 40 hours a week. It is a time where they are laid off. However, keeping in regular contact with them, I think, is absolutely fine. And they need to, otherwise it's almost like a redundancy situation. So we use Slack as our communication tool. We haven't taken them off Slack. We have, if we want to check in on them, or we would obviously email their personal email just to see, just a general, how are you doing? What's going on? Are you okay? I think that's more than fine.
But you can't use their business emails.
I wouldn't agree with that. I'm not a lawyer, but I wouldn't agree. As long as you're not asking them to perform any work. I would probably suggest, to cover yourself, I would probably suggest that when you are furloughing them, explain to them that you'd really love to keep in contact with them, because it's really important that you check to see how they're going and what is their preferred method of contact.
Yeah.
I would probably just do that, but I don't think there's, that's probably the safest way to do it.
And what about for organisations that are possibly going through a more significant reorganisation and unpredictability around what does the future look like for them? What do you anticipate, Hannah, to be the sort of, you could say, the legalities of them coming back into the business, and how might that actually work?
Well, of course, there are going to be cases where furloughed employees actually are made redundant at the end of this. There is going to be those cases, I'm sure of it. This is a way to kind of prevent that and maybe extend that decision, in the hope that businesses can pivot and they can change their offering in order to provide work long term. But for those that do have to do more significant changes, you would still have to go through a redundancy process or a consultation process. So even if their role is changing, even if you need them back, but you need them back in a different role, I would still recommend that you do a consultation process with them. So most contracts, there's normally a month's consultation period that you would recommend, just so you're getting their thoughts and feedback. But yes, you still need to go through the legal consultation process if you're going to make any redundancies or any reorganisations.
And so, from a practicality perspective, when will employers receive the money for the furloughing? Because my understanding is that, so what happens is that the employee is still paid on the payroll as per normal, and that the government will reimburse for national insurance and pension payments for that furloughed employee. So what do you know, sort of what is the process for making a claim for that, and when will that be paid?
Well, it's your payroll provider, your payroll administrator will be doing the practicalities of that. But at the moment, the HMRC haven't even set up the portal. They've said that the portal will be in place by the end of April, but nobody's seen it yet because it's not in place. So what we are led to believe, that the employee that is furloughed, they won't see any difference on their pay slip apart from the reduction in pay. But they will still see, the pension contributions going out, etc., and it's still subject to tax and national insurance. But in terms of how you get the money back from the HMRC, we are led to believe that it's through an HMRC portal, but practically speaking, they haven't given any advice other than that yet. I think they're still writing the software for it.
Yeah, so as a company, you've still got to have the cash reserves to be able to pay those wages in the meantime.
Yes.
Until that portal gets released, and then I believe there's a time lapse then with regards to when they'll actually pay the claim. So we're all doing this in good faith at
Yes.
the moment.
Yeah.
That there'll be a portal, and eventually we'll receive our claims.
That's right. And there's been some unhelpful advice actually from an HR point of view, or from my respected colleagues would agree with me. There's been some unhelpful advice from the media to suggest that if you've been made redundant, you should be able to insist that your company take you back on and furlough you. Well, of course, that might not be the case for that very reason. There just might not be the funds there to bring them back. And also there will be cases where there is a genuine redundancy. There will be businesses closing right now. So that, and they will be genuine redundancies. They won't be the case. So it's not helpful when it's kind of mixed messages out there.
I mean, another thing we're doing is we're also putting together business cases for each person that we furlough. So what we're trying to do is have a trail of documented evidence of what we've done, why we made that decision, because we feel that later on, sometime down the line, that you could get these spurious companies propping up and saying, but did your company do it in the right way? Did they follow the right process? We can get you, et cetera, no fee, so we're following that up, but also I'm not sure whether the HMRC are going to get more diligent later down the line with regards to whether they were true furloughs or not.
I agree, Andrew. I think if you take all the emotion side of it out of this, the positive and the negative emotion away from it, the HMRC are giving us taxpayers' money, so there will be, I'm sure of it, some kind of audit and some kind of paper trail and evidence that. So I think that's really good advice there that you've given to document the reasons why you're furloughing and how you're going about it, definitely.
The other thing is also we've found out is that from an income point of view as a business, so any grant that you get awarded or any furloughing that happens that you claim for is actually considered as additional income on your business. So when you come to close off your end of year accounts, that will be classified as additional revenue, which will be entitled to corporation tax. So there's just another thing to consider. This is not free money. It will be taxed.
So the other side of all of this is that there is a ceiling to how much that people can be paid. Hannah, do you have more details on that?
So it's 80% of the average wage. So the national average wage that works out about it's 2,500 a month. It's capped at that. So it's not 80% of anyone's wages. It's capped at 2,500 a month.
So that means for organisations who perhaps have maybe the average salary is higher, say £50,000, then that's going to be more of a challenge for them to consider furloughing unless they're generous like yourselves to top that up to 100%.
Yes, it is. And it might be that might be part of your decision-making process, because the advice now is to conserve as much cash and, to extend your cash runway for as long as possible to protect the longevity of your business. Part of those reasons might be that you might look at the lower paid employees, but the advice has to be the same, that you have to look at where is the work stopping and where's the work drying up, essentially. So you're not cherry picking just those lower paid employees, you're looking at it properly. But it's a definite consideration, because somebody on 50,000 or more, £2,500 is not going to be 80% of their salary.
We've got somebody that is in that situation that we're probably going to furlough end of next week, where we're looking to top it up. So it still gives us a saving, but not a total saving, because we just have to take into consideration that that's potentially a big drop.
So my husband works in the aviation industry. He's a pilot, and I think that certainly we all know that aviation has been particularly hard hit, and I would say that the average salary is above that. So it's really hard for some organisations to, I would say, to consider where they need to sort of preserve employees so that when this ends, that they've got the resources, especially the very highly skilled resources, to grow their business more quickly again. And I think that the organizations that I've seen that seem more resilient to the sort of turmoil that's going on at the moment are those that have a really strong culture. And I guess from your perspective of looking after people, Hannah, what's your advice to organizations about how culture can help them through this period of change?
I think over communication is key. If anything, you're going to get really high engagement from your employees right now, because it's a testament to how you pull everyone together. I think you've probably seen lots of positive stories. I know we're kind of mainlining the news, all of us, and there's lots of negative things out there, but actually there's loads of positive stuff as well. We're doing things differently. We're collaborating in a different way, and that is true testament to human nature coming together when times are tough. And that's the same with culture as well. This is going to test your culture. You're going to have to do things differently. You can't do your weekly, I don't know, whatever you're doing, weekly bake-offs and things like that anymore. You're going to have to do it virtually. And we all have the technology to do that. So 4:00 today, we will be having our virtual beer trolley. It's a time where to just down tools and connect with people outside of work and just talk normally. But there's lots of creative things and lots of creative ideas in how to do that. One-to-ones, I would say, are still important now more so than ever. I would actually recommend increasing the frequency of your one-to-ones. If they were once a month, for example, I would actually increase that to weekly. It doesn't have to be half an hour or an hour one-to-one, but just generally just to see a face, just for 10-15 minutes to check in on your line reports. I'd really recommend doing that. And then just checking in on each other. So virtual coffees, virtual hangouts, just making sure that it is really important that you physically see a face, because sometimes when you're working at home and you're just looking out the window or looking at a wall, that's when the loneliness comes, and that's when the disengagement can really be prevalent, really.
Thank you for that, Hannah. Andrew, what sort of things are you doing in your business to keep people connected and to keep the culture alive?
Again, being a technology company, we're actually used to working remotely, because I run half my business here and half the business in Tunisia, so we're used to not seeing each other. Also, we do spend a lot of time on customer sites as well. So we use, we're used to using the Microsoft suite, so we use Teams a lot. Whereas before all this happened, we were using Teams, but we would only message each other. What's happening more and more now is we're actually calling each other. So both calling, but also using the camera. We were a bit shy with the camera before, but now most meetings now are with the camera, and it's not just on a one-on-one. It's multiples, and you can bring people in quite easily. But a lot of what we're doing less. I'd say we're doing now far less on email. We're doing more in regards to Teams with, as I say, the camera, and also voice. So actually, we're talking to each other a lot more, and we're seeing each other a lot more. So I think that goes back to the comment earlier about over communication. I actually feel that I'm closer to people now than I'm ever been.
It does feel like a busy time. I feel like My daughter commented, actually, she said, "Mum, you're just talking to people all the time," and that's true, and that's her noticing. And so some of the things that we're doing at Cloud9 is we have a virtual coffee. So we have a team meeting that starts at 8 in the morning and ends at 8 at night. So if people are having a coffee or a lunch break, they can drop in. There might be colleagues there. And I do encourage people to use video. We also have in Teams, you can have chats, and we have a chat on the team of fun and good news, and we have people frequently post pictures of maybe their lunch or their work environment or their pets or things like that, and that sort of helps with the sort of fun banter, so it's not all just work. And I think it's become even more. Teams was always important for our business, but it's become even more a core to how we work. And I agree with you, Andrew, that I would say that there's less emails internally, which is good for everybody, and there's more team chats, so that could be maybe the marketing team with updates and things like that, and we have a weekly call on Teams where literally everybody from the whole company, and we can have a sort of, everyone has a chance to sort of contribute, and we sort of talk about what's going on and things like that to just make people feel connected. But then at a local sort of level within Teams, there was more regular updates and definitely more catch-ups within the teams as well as themselves. And what I love about this change that we're going through at the moment is that that clients are realizing, you know what, this works as a way of working, and our clients are all over the UK, and so we've even been undertaking what would normally be a 2-day workshop on site with a client. We've been doing those remote, and that's working. We had an open mind, but I think people are very sort of adaptive to what's going on right now, so that's encouraging. And so, out of interest, with furloughing in mind, what are your predictions, Andrew, for how this is going to help organisations get through this difficult time?
How it's going to? Well, I think if the government hadn't come, I believe this is an American idea, furloughing. I think it's probably the first time they've done it in the UK. Had they have not come up with this offering, there would have been massive fallout. And I think, backdating it to the beginning of March, because companies were already laying people off, they were having to. I mean, you've got to keep your business up and running. So having this facility is a lifesaver, an absolute lifesaver. And the fact you can flex it as well. So you can actually put someone on furlough, bring them back, and then put them on furlough again. Okay, 2 months is not a very long period of time, but maybe we'll find that it gets extended, because everything at the moment seems to be sort of 3 months, but nobody knows at the moment when we're going to be allowed more free movement. I mean, lockdown was supposed to be until, I think it was Bank Holiday Monday. I really can't see that at the moment. But no, I mean, to us, it's a godsend, and I think to our customers as well. So we've still got customers. However, I think without this facility, some of them would have, gone under. So it's allowed us to keep business running, but to contract for a temporary period, and then hopefully then grow again. And as we said earlier, then start to bring people back into the business again.
And that'd be great, though, just to see some seeds of growth, and to be able to just bring the same people back who understand your culture, and they will have been, I'm sure they'll be very refreshed and sort of in a good mindset to hit the ground running, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, we also mentioned earlier with regards to, some people might want to furlough because, they've got older relatives to look after, they've got families to look after, etc. We've had a couple of people that want to do voluntary work. So they've put, volunteered and put their hand up and said, I'd like to be furloughed because I would actually like to help and do some voluntary work, which is allowed under the scheme. So we've been able to make that happen as well.
That's great. And Hannah, what's the opportunity been for your business in having the ability to furlough people?
I think the same, really. It's the ability to conserve and preserve cash, really, and because we've taken advantage of all of the schemes that the government have put in place, with the delaying of paying in VAT and landlords and things like that, because cash is king, as we know, and it just gives us the ability to do that. And so I'd mirror exactly what Andrew has said. It gives companies the confidence, the ability to look at things differently, and to extend their runway, to extend their success periods, because it was very dangerous for SMBs, for big businesses as well. But SMBs underpin our economy, so we cannot let that ecosystem collapse. And so this is a real lifeline for small businesses. And my prediction is that it's going to be longer than the end of May, because we don't see an end to it yet. So I don't think 3 months is going to be long enough. I do still think that it's going to be there is still going to be some fallout from it, but it's a really good lifeline for businesses.
And I think that the growth of the economy in the future will be underpinned by the confidence of consumers. So our employees are those very consumers, which are then in turn going to be feeding growth of small businesses. So I think whatever we can do to preserve their individual economic sustainability is a positive thing, especially during this period of lockdown as well and uncertainty. So we've touched a little bit about sort of keeping in touch with your extended team. Do you have any advice, Hannah, on communication about this? Once you've made the decision to furlough people, which should the communication be with your customers and with your employees, especially?
Well, we haven't communicated out to our employees because we only furloughed 4 people. It didn't have a direct impact on our clients at all, actually. The people that we chose to furlough because they're not having a direct impact on what we're building. We're building a new product at the moment, and they are not directly involved in that. So that's the only reason. So there was no need to communicate to clients that way. But in terms for the rest of the business, it was really important, and we will keep reinforcing it, that these people were not furloughed because they are not very much part of our Futurely family, and they're not important to our future success. We were simply taking advantage of the help that the government are offering, and I think that's to put that message and spin on things is really important, because it can, if you don't message the rest of the team correctly, then it can, create a bit of an uneasiness. Is this the first step of going towards redundancies, etc., etc.? There will always be that kind of uneasiness, I think, in any company. But to try and reinforce the message of why and what you're doing, I think is really important.
Thank you. And Andrew, what's your thoughts? And Andrew, what's your thoughts on sort of communication internally or with customers at this time about furloughing?
So what we did, I'm losing track of time. I think it was beginning of last week. Beginning of last week. We got our management team on a Teams call and explained the situation we were in, and explained what we'd done with regards to taking advantage of all the different payment holidays, and also explained what was happening with our customer base in regards to, they were furloughing, so it was something we were going to have to consider. And then to give them the message to go off and talk to their teams, and the fact that we were looking for volunteers. So, should someone want to volunteer for, the fact that they've got elderly relatives, or they've got children, or they prefer to be furloughed, or they want to do some volunteering, that sort of thing. That's the way we did it. We haven't communicated anything to our clients, our customers, because it doesn't really impact them, as long as we keep our service levels. So we have SLAs, KPIs that we have to adhere to. So it wasn't it wasn't that necessary. But this is still early days. I mean, we've furloughed one person so far. We've got 3 going today. We've got 1 on Monday, and then probably 2 by the end of next week, Thursday, because it's bank holiday Friday. So this is still really early days, and I think there's still a lot of learning to be done. So we've done as much communication as we can, but we don't really know how this is going to pan out, how long it's going to go on for.
It's part of the uncertainty.
It is part of the uncertainty. And the other thing is, I think also, is that I don't believe that this is just going to be a unique event. I believe that unless we get on top of controlling things like viruses and be prepared for it, this could happen again. And I think as we come out, whenever that is, there's a chance that lessons learned. How would we do it better next time? Because this happened very, very quickly. I mean, companies, even some of our own customers were not prepared for this at all. So I think there's opportunity as we come out, learning from this and being more prepared next time, because I think there will be a next time.
So, out of interest, Hannah, what other options do you think employers have available to reduce their costs, or the other option could be to sort of improve their ability to sort of come out the other side of this in a more positive, productive way? So potentially offering part-time, maybe encouraging people to take some of their holiday at this time. What options do you think employers have available to them?
Well, I think, you could, if you need to reduce your cost base, then I would recommend doing all of those kind of things. So see if there's any volunteers who want to work flexibly, so part-time, reduced hours. I've seen a lot of companies in our portfolio are still recommending and putting a 20% pay cut across the board. So 20% for leaders and 10% for the rest of their staff. Sometimes it's 20%, all of the staff. Again, that has to be through negotiation and agreement. You can't just unilaterally do that. But it is happening. Holiday, it's good to encourage holiday, but of course that doesn't reduce your cost. It just reduces the impact of them having to take holiday later in the year when business will pick up. And then just looking at seeing, and I would try, as difficult as it is working remotely, productivity generally goes up when you're working remotely. But to encourage that innovation and perhaps put some challenges to the staff and say, look, these are the areas that we need to look creatively at. What are your ideas? How can we generate revenue? What are the things that we haven't looked at? Because if you give someone a problem, often they'll come up with a solution. So if you put some fun around it, some challenge around it, then you can get some innovative thinking. And you never know, there could be a new product on the horizon, which could be your new cash king. You never know.
Yeah, incubate some of those ideas.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They might be the very sort of new services or products that will help you find new growth in your business. So just to finish off, I wondered if you could share, Andrew, one piece of advice to businesses right now that are thinking about furloughing. What would your thoughts be?
Definitely consider it. Definitely consider it. It was hard for us initially to understand it. Now we understand it. Now we understand that it's a benefit. It is a benefit. Your customers are going to be doing it anyway. And if your customers are coming to you for a temporary reduction in their fees, the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to be reducing your own costs. Your wages are probably the majority of your outgoings, but done in the right way and used as a tool rather than as just a basic cost cutting exercise, and done properly with your people so they understand. And I suppose all the things that we've chatted about through this podcast it can be used in a very, very effective way. So don't shy away from it at all.
Thanks, Andrew. And Hannah, what would your one piece of advice be?
I would agree with Andrew. I think, take advantage of the scheme while you can, because we don't know how long it's going to be available for. It is one of the few schemes that are available from the government at the moment, and just have a look at things differently. I think I've talked about it a few times, but over communication is key, and involving your staff in your decision, it really can pay dividends in the long run. So the way that you position it, the way you consult with them, the way you talk to them, the way you're transparent with them, just make sure that it's really engaging. And if you are going to furlough anyone, then just keep in contact with them, because you're going to need them when the business comes out of this stronger.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess to add my thoughts, I would say that I think at any time, but especially now, you should be considering what is the value that an individual can add to your business. And instead of taking a knee-jerk reaction to the situation, give some thought to how somebody's skills might be used in a different way, how your business might need to change. A good friend of mine, he has restructured his business. So instead of selling his produce out to schools and restaurants, now he sells directly to the public. And so he's been able to, you could say, save a lot of jobs by thinking out of the box and being more creative about how he goes to market and using the existing resources that he has, which is really exciting to see. And I think that there's an opportunity at this time, once you've looked at your cash flow, to sort of think, well, if there is a drop-off in one area, is it appropriate to grow something else in the business that might give you new revenue streams that you hadn't thought of before? So, well, I'd like to thank both of you for joining me today. It's been great chatting to you about this really topical point of furloughing, and we'll catch you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.